It is the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. We're here every single day from 5 to 6 talking about the local issues that matter to you most and taking your phone calls at 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. Your emails as well at randykabc@gmail.com and search for the KABC News Blitz wherever you get your podcasts. Give us a subscribe. I'm sure you're aware that I follow a lot of different things to bring you content on this show. I follow all of our local news channels, see what's going on every single day when it comes to crime stories or stories covering local government. And then, of course, I go directly to the source. I listen to LA City Council meetings. I'm such a dork. I listen to LA City Council committee hearings. I check out what's going on in the assembly. I follow individual politicians to see when they're posting things, not just on YouTube, but on social media as well. And every Tuesday, I try to check in what's going on with the LA County Board of Supervisors. But once a month, there's a very special meeting that I always make sure to tune into. Because once a month, there is a full meeting of the board of LA Metro that is comprised of Karen Bass, members of the city council, members from other cities in the county, and all 5 supervisors like Barger,
quite frankly,
Hilda,
quite frankly,
Holly,
quite frankly,
Horvath,
quite frankly,
and Janice.
That's your final warning.
Janice is never going to say it. Just to spite me, she'll never say it. But Janice is actually the head of LA Metro right now. She's the chair of the Metro Board, Janice Hahn.
I love the bus driver.
And I was listening to Janice Hahn's comments as they always start each meeting off with comments by the chair. And Janice Hahn had some very interesting things to say about the future of Metro, specifically how Metro is going to be funded. Let's find out what she had to say. I'm always fascinated by all things transit because we spend a lot of money on transit in this county and it doesn't go anywhere and it's not safe. So let's see what the plan is for 2025, everybody.
Last week, I joined Long Beach Mayor Rex Richardson.
Close enough. She was going to say Richard Rexon.
Rex Richardson and our Metro CEO, Stephanie Wiggins, to meet 2 very distinguished members of Congress who are on Congress's Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. Our ranking member, Representative Rick Larson from Washington, and our own Congress member from Long Beach, Robert Garcia.
Oh, boy, what a party they must have had.
I served on the Committee of Transportation and Infrastructure when I was in Congress for 5.5 years. And
is there a job in government Janice Hahn hasn't had? She's been on the city council. She's been on the board of supervisors. She's been in Congress.
And I know how important that particular committee in Congress is as it relates to the infrastructure across our country and for building transit projects nationwide. And the first thing I did was I shared my concerns with the Congress members about the Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy's memo.
Oh, there was a memo. See, it's no longer Mayor Pete running the transportation department. It's Sean Duffy, the guy that came down to Union Station and said, we got to investigate this high-speed rail. And then someone tried to throw tomatoes because they said, we want high-speed rail. But they were like, yeah, but you're not getting high-speed rail. That's the whole point.
That was directing the Department of Transportation to prioritize federal funding for cities and counties with higher marriage and birth rates.
That's interesting.
A policy that seems designed to steer tax dollars away from counties like Los Angeles. And also a priority to not fund transportation projects in jurisdictions that would mandate vaccines or masks requirements in the event of another major pandemic.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. So it looks like Sean Duffy is well aware of the work of one Barbara J. Ferrer.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's her middle name. Oh, yes, the mask mandates on the buses. You know, in order to protect the bus drivers from COVID, they installed those plexiglass barriers. They were supposed to protect you from COVID. Turns out they're not stab-proof or shoot-proof, so now they're installing stronger ones.
So
let's not forget that those good old COVID times are when Metro allowed their entire system to become one giant homeless encampment.
So I'm concerned about that, as we all should be, because losing federal funding would seriously impact our ability to finish many of the projects that are underway.
See, this is something that maybe you're not aware of, maybe you are, but you might have assumed that when you voted for something like Measure M all those years ago or Measure R all those years before that, that your tax dollars are directly funding projects like that Purple Line extension through Beverly Hills, the Sepulveda Pass line that's never going to happen. They've been planning it for what seems like my entire life, and there's still no shovel in the ground. And all the other extensions of the Gold Line into neighborhoods that are now having problems with the homeless, like Azusa. All of these projects aren't just funded by your local tax dollars when you decide to tax yourself, and they're not just funded by the state, but these transit agencies get a lot of grants from the federal government, and a lot of these transit agencies, not just LA Metro down here, but Muni and BART up in the San Francisco Bay Area, got a lot of emergency funding during COVID to keep these agencies afloat. These agencies spent a lot of money, ballooned their budgets, and now that federal money is gone, and they might even have less of it, and now they all claim, we're broke. What are we going to do?
So I'm concerned about that, as we all should be, because losing federal funding would seriously impact our ability to finish many of the projects that are underway, ones that our residents have put their fair share of tax dollars toward. So I'm really glad that we had that opportunity to meet.
This was the whole thing with the high-speed rail as well, is that we voted for that bond, but it was supposed to be one-to-one federal dollars, and that was always so exciting. See, the county loves to do things when the state ponies up some money. They're almost like financially incentivized to do something, whether they want to do it or not, because there's money there. For instance, California's Department of Health wanted to put together and fund a grant for a needle exchange program in Carlsbad in San Diego County. And the locals didn't want it, but the county was like, well, we need that money. Because, of course, they can do a lot of things with that money outside of, passing out needles. There's so much of an addiction to state money and to federal money that none of these projects are funded on one source alone, which makes them ever more complicated when one of those sources runs dry. Whether you have a federal government that has different priorities or you have a state government that's broke and doesn't want to fund a whole bunch of things. There is so much screaming and crying going on every single time there's a budget deficit because all of these promises that were made to, the ridiculous amount of homeless nonprofits out there that are getting state money, that are getting local money, and sometimes even federal money. Like, what are we going to do? The money's going to dry up.
So I'm really glad that we had that opportunity to meet with Representative Larson and Representative Garcia. And I always like to emphasize with members of Congress that Los Angeles County is really a unique jurisdiction.
Where are you going with this, Janice?
Unlike, I would say, the majority of counties and cities across this country who pretty much just complain about higher taxes, we, on the other hand, vote to raise our own taxes. Time and time again, this jurisdiction has voted to raise their taxes for specific projects like transportation projects that they know will enhance their quality of life.
Well, I don't know about that. But she is right that Los Angeles County constantly keeps voting to raise their own taxes. In fact, even though we have seen zero progress on the homeless issue countywide with Measure H and with the city and Measure Triple H, LA County residents overwhelmingly voted for Measure A, which goes into effect in April, which doubles that homeless sales tax. We gave them double the amount of money with zero results. So that one's on us.
I kind of always think we should go to the front of the class in Washington, D.C., because we are certainly contributing a lot and bringing a lot to the table when we ask for federal dollars.
Why? Because our citizens either are too ill-informed or too sympathetic to the cause to open up the wallets and say, sure, take more of our money without any certifiable results. I mean, look at all the money that we have spent on LA Metro, all the grants, all the Measure M dollars, the Measure R dollars, the federal, the state money. It doesn't really go anywhere. It's super inconvenient, it's slow, and it's dangerous. And ridership is down severely compared to 10 years ago. Great job.
I can always think we should go to the front of the class in Washington, D.C., because we are certainly contributing a lot and bringing a lot to the table when we ask for federal dollars. So on that note, 2 months ago, I threw out the suggestion at one of these board meetings to have our legislative folks add a transit bond to our state legislative agenda, because I was thinking, just in case we do see less federal dollars and possibly, dollars that we were counted on, why not think about floating our own in the state of California transportation bond? Because again, I think
So the federal money is drying up for all of these projects that haven't really gone anywhere. So now Janice Hahn has gotten her friends in the California legislature to write up a bill that'll probably end up as a ballot measure next year for us to vote on a bond. Do we want to spend even more money on public transit in Southern and Northern California?
Transportation bond, because again, I think the mood of those in California, particularly here, are to figure out ways to pay for transportation projects.
Maybe. But maybe people have seen no progress. Look, not only have we not seen a whole lot of metro built to a point where it's actually efficient. If you live in the San Fernando Valley, you know what I'm talking about. But have you ever thought about the fact that you compare traffic before Measure M, you compare traffic before, let's take, for instance, the Expo line, that big old line that goes between Santa Monica and downtown. Have you noticed any noticeable difference in traffic? Has it gotten any better since they built that thing? No. Has traffic in the valley gotten any better since the Orange Line? No. And now, what do they do with a lot of these metro dollars? Well, they're starting to invest in BRT, bus rapid transit, which means they take lanes away from you, the person driving a car, and make it reserved for the buses, so the buses can go faster at your expense. And these are the things that our tax dollars will pay for. And even if it's a bond, that's just borrowing from us from the future. We're still paying for it.
So good news is the newly elected Assembly member, Nick Schultz, introduced Assembly Bill 939 last week, which would place a $20 million transit bond on the November 3rd statewide ballot.
I think we think that. I'm pretty sure it's $20 billion. On
the November 3rd statewide ballot to fund sustainable transportation throughout California. It doesn't seem like that much, $20 million. Is it $20 billion?
Sometimes Janice got a Janice.
Good. I was like, that wouldn't even do my groundbreaking at the Southeast Gateway.
I would reject.
Okay, staff, that's $20 billion. We have already co-sponsored the bill, and I look forward to continued updates about how we can all help this bill get across the finish line. So I'm very excited about that. It's amazing when you throw out ideas here at a Metro Board meeting. They take flight, and good.
Janice really is just a stream of consciousness.
They take flight, and good things happen. Thank you, Michael and Madeline, and your team for really moving on this and picking this project up quickly for us.
So there you go. Janice Hahn is advocating for a ballot measure next year, a $20 billion bond to specifically fund public transit projects and public transit agencies, whether they make money or not, in Southern California and Northern California. $20 billion. And, you know, I don't want to be completely one-sided here. I think Janice Hahn has made some improvements to Metro since she took over. The tap-to-exit program going station-wide, I think, is a great idea. The raising of the turnstiles to where you cannot get out of there. It's now a gate that you can't jump over, but you can ghost somebody. That's good. She's looking into weapon detection, which maybe makes sense if it works at certain stations. I don't know how you do any of this at bus stops, and I don't know if there's any feasible way to do that. But there have been some notable improvements when it comes to safety. But it's still incredibly inconvenient. And here's my issue with the bond, because we're talking about taking out a $20 billion loan to keep these agencies afloat. When, if you're looking in the future, it's very well possible that these systems that we're building, these trains, these bus-only lanes, they may be obsolete in 5 years, in 10 years. The automated cars are coming. You've already seen the Waymos going around. When you start to see those things at critical mass, to the point where it would be as affordable to take a bus or a train or to have the robocar take you from wherever you are to the next destination that you need to go to, then what are we building all this for? Because all of this stuff that we're building is not going to be used by anybody. But who knows if that's going to happen anytime soon. I guess you get a plan for what we have now. But here's what I want to know, because Janice Hahn believes that you, the constituents of California, are so generous, you're willing to tax yourselves over and over and over again. And maybe that's still true, but maybe it's not, because this agency has mismanaged a ton of money. They wasted a whole bunch of money on transit ambassadors. That didn't work. So now they're doing a 5-year program to explore making their own police force, which won't really work because it's so hard to hire police officers to begin with. But sure, give it a try. But in the wake of losing federal funding, Janice Hahn wants you to vote on a ballot measure for a $20 billion bond to pay for Metro. And by the way, this would be a statewide ballot measure, but all the money would pretty much go to San Francisco and LA. So good luck convincing Fresno on this one. But here's what I want to know. Just piquing your interest. 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. Would you sign up for a $20 billion bond to give even more money to LA Metro? 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. Are you ready to tax yourselves even more for the sake of public transit in Los Angeles? 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. We're taking your phone calls at 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. In anticipation of the federal government cutting off funding to LA Metro and BART and Muni, Janice Hahn has asked the legislature to draft a bond proposal that you'll be voting on next year, $20 billion that we need to borrow to fund our public transit agencies so they can continue building trains that nobody rides. My question to you at 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222 is this: should we tax ourselves even more for public transit in Los Angeles? 800-222-KABC. Let's go to Philip in Fontana. Philip, hello.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, with all this money they got from infrastructure from Biden, they've only spent half of it. They got billions of dollars in a savings account. Why don't they use those millions of untaxable interest to pay for these projects?
That's a really good question. You know, there's always some money they're hiding for something. And the thing that's so irritating is so much of that money that was supposed to go towards, infrastructure, rebuilding bridges, maybe fixing some freeways. They spent so much of that, especially at LA Metro, on road diets and closing down lanes for bus-only lanes because that worked. Traffic calming was written into the language of that infrastructure bill.
So they had this long list of things that they wanted to get done, and they're not doing it.
You're right. Thanks so much for the call, Phil. Appreciate it. 800-222-KABC is the phone number. 1-800-222-5222. Janice Hahn thinks you're willing to vote on a $20 billion bond next year to continue to fund public transit in Los Angeles. What say you? 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. If you're on hold, stay on hold. We're getting to you next. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. We're here every single day from 5 to 6 talking about the local issues that matter to you most and taking your phone calls at 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. Your emails as well at randykabc@gmail.com. And the easiest way to get the podcast of this show, go to kabc.com/newsblitz and download every episode. In the wake of the federal government possibly cutting off funding to Metro, Janice Hahn, the chair of LA Metro, has a great idea. Let's have the California legislature write a bill that'll go on next year's ballot for a $20 billion bond to double down on funding LA Metro, BART, Muni, all these public transit agencies that lost a whole bunch of money because during the pandemic, they let them turn into homeless shelters. Despite the fact that you voted yes on Measure R in 2008 and Measure M in 2016, Janice Hahn says we need even more money to keep public transit afloat. $20 billion. My question to you at 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222 is this. If a $20 billion transit bond goes on the ballot, how are you voting on it? 800-222-KABC. I personally think that a 20-year bond that we're paying back in decades is short-sighted because I think Metro is going to be completely obsolete within 10 years. If you've driven in a Waymo, you know what I'm talking about. Let's go to Lauren in Westminster. Lauren, hello.
Hi, Randy. My answer is hell no. We keep voting to tax ourselves more and more every election cycle. I don't get it, and we get zero results. But you brought up something that I had to call in. You talked about how they'll take away lanes on the freeway and give them to the bus. They're doing that with our carpool lanes. We've been paying taxes for years for carpool lanes. They're taking them away and giving them to private organizations to turn them into toll roads. How the hell is that even legal?
It's insane what they're doing, and these projects do not alleviate traffic, and the amount of time it takes for the construction to have them done is a massive pain in the butt. They're planning one of these in the 405 Sepulveda Pass area by 2028. I doubt it will ever happen. And then where does all that money go from the transponders?
Exactly. I got the hell out of L.A. County a few years ago and moved to Orange County. I used to commute to Carson. I would use the carpool lanes on my motorcycle, which is one of the reasons I have one, to get to Carson. And I'd get over there, no problem. Now they've taken those lanes away, and they are now toll roads. They're toll lanes until you get into Long Beach. And now they're doing it to the 22 freeway right now. They're actually turning that into a toll lane. My question is, hopefully one of your listeners can comment, but how is that legal? We paid for those lanes.
That's a really good point and something we got to figure out and get to the bottom of, because that seems like they're double and triple taxing us once again. Thanks so much for the call, Lauren. Appreciate it. Enjoy your 10-lane freeways down on the 405 and the 5 freeway in beautiful, gorgeous Orange County. 800-222-KABC is the phone number. Would you vote yes on a $20 billion bond next year to fund even more public transit projects? Let's go to Bob in Encino. Bob, hello.
Hi, how you doing, Randy? I would vote no. You know, I realize there's a need for public transportation and there's a demand for it. But I've had a little experience with I've built projects that interface with Metro subway, Metro train, Metro buses, and I've had some training to be able to work with them. And when I see the lack of any competent rationale, any common sense in how they design, and I'm going to give you a small example. I have 10 examples. I'm going to give you a small one that people can kind of sink their teeth into and comprehend. I was building a project in Westwood Village, and I noticed the Metro buses were coming through, and there were these giant articulated buses, and they had dedicated lanes, but these buses, to be able to move in and out of lanes, never take up less than 2 lanes at any given time. They completely jam up traffic. Now, here's the clincher. There were never more than 6 or 7 people on these buses, and they were coming through every 15 minutes, totally messing up the traffic in the UCLA Westridge Village area. Also doing massive damage to the roads. And why, I asked myself, do they ever have more than 16 people on these buses? Never. So I called some of my buddies in Metro and said, hey, what you see what's going on over there? Why don't they use the Dash, a little 22-passenger bus, in and out, don't impact traffic? They'd never be full. And they said, hey, Bob, thanks. We'll look into that. So I noticed 90 days later, their answer was they tinted the windows so dark in the big articulated buses, you couldn't tell they were empty. So I called them back. I said, why are these buses? Why so many? Well, we have an agreement with UCLA, and they have to do it.
It makes no sense. That's one small example of one small corridor, and that's happening system-wide, and it is so inefficient and not realistic.
It's not. I could tell you other stories about their trains, but that's another story for another time.
Well, Bob, we're going to be bringing this up again, so I'll expect you to call back, and I would love to hear more.
They should defund Metro. Just defund it, because it's not about – I can't wait for AI. I can't wait for these traffic planners to ask AI, hey, how do we solve commute times and congestion? Because the answer is simple. It doesn't cost a dime, not a cent. You stagger commute times. You don't build anything. You don't spend any money. They'll never do that.
And that's exactly what they did in 1984 with the Olympics. And even though Karen Bass is like, hey, we should do that again, nobody seems to be doing that. Instead, we're building a whole bunch of stuff that nobody's using, and it's clogging up even more traffic. Thanks for the call, Bob. Appreciate it. To what I said earlier, we have built all of this. Going back to the Red Line opening in 1993, have we seen better traffic from any of these lines, from the expanses of the buses or the bus rapid transit? Traffic has never gotten better. The only time traffic was better, the only time traffic worked well in this city is when we sent everyone home for COVID. I know, because I never got to work from home. And it always seemed to me that if you want to get cars off the road to, save the planet, maybe you got to incentivize some more telecommuting. Maybe you got to stagger the commute times. But no, we want to keep spending even more money on Metro. Let's go to George in Simi Valley. George, hello.
Hi, Randy. Thanks for letting me on. I used to ride the Metro all the time when I went to the Philharmonic, which is what I'm doing tonight. I'd pick it up in North Hollywood, go right down, took 20 minutes, coming back, no problem. I was a big proselytizer for it. I'm like, this thing's great. And that all changed, I don't know, 2017 or 18. I think there were a couple of viral videos of people getting arrested for breaking the rules. And Metro's response to that was to tell the police, we're not going to arrest anybody anymore. And that's where it really started going off the rails. And then after COVID, it got worse and worse. But I wrote it again last year going down there, and I thought, well, maybe it's gotten better. No, it's not better. The car I was on, somebody was lighting up something. I got out of there because I didn't want to breathe it in and, go to the hospital myself. And so the car that I moved into, the next segment, there's a guy at one end who's defecating. So that's the reason why these things, they're taking your money, but they're not giving us a good service. And one other thing they've done that really annoyed me is that those things at night used to go every 7 or 8 minutes. And then they reduced it at night to every 30 minutes. Well, that's not very useful. If I missed one coming out of the concert, I could sit there for 35, 40 minutes. And, now why did I even bother?
Yeah, that does not sound like a pleasant experience whatsoever. Thank you so much for sharing that experience with us, George. I appreciate it. It's interesting you said 2017, because that's around the time Metro took the security contract away from the sheriff's department and divided it among LA County Sheriff, LAPD, and Long Beach PD. And that's worked out great. More of your phone calls coming up. Janice Hahn wants you to vote yes on a $20 billion bond measure to continue to fund public transit in Los Angeles. What say you? 800-222-KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. Let's go back to the phones. Go to Richard in Long Beach. Richard, hello.
Hey, how you doing, Randy? The bond thing, it's that's the last refuge for dirty politicians. People don't realize a 20-year bond, you pay for it forever. Your kids pay for it after you're not even involved anymore. And if they need something, like, say, in 10 or 15 years, like a reservoir built or some huge project, now we got to go back and get another bond for that. The other comment I have is the other gentleman was talking about solutions that don't have any cost. Well, the problem for that is the politicians, they don't get to create a bureaucracy, for their friends to be on the board. Quick example, you can just look up the train to nowhere. There's a whole board of directors. They pay themselves very richly. They give themselves bonuses, yearly bonuses, even though there's not even tracks laid down, and it goes on and on. It never ends. You got to quit. You got to quit voting for it, folks. Bottom line.
I think you make a really strong point, Richard. Thanks so much for the call. Appreciate it. And these bond money could be used on anything. Sure, it could be used to build the Sepulveda line that's never going to get built. It could also go towards electric buses. And here's something fun. Did you know that electric buses weigh so much more than regular buses that they damage streets so much quicker? That's what happened in Indianapolis, where after 3 years of service, they destroyed all the roads that they were riding on. And we're going to have even more electric buses here for the Olympics. Hey, it's a lightning round of phone calls coming up next. If you're on hold, stay on hold. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. We're getting near the end of the show, so it's time for a lightning round. Try to make your point in about 30 seconds so we can try to get everybody on. Let's start with Ben in Beverly Hills. Ben, hello.
How you doing?
Doing great.
I'm about 70 years old. First job in municipal transportation and planning, and taking the LA buses all these years, and I just wonder, why are the routes planned so inefficiently? You shouldn't have to look at a schedule. Things should be coming along on either high volume or low volume routes at the same frequency. So you don't have to have a schedule or look on the internet. If you do, you'll see the state and county maps are very hard to read. So it's almost like they don't want you to take the bus. I'm certain very few of them take their own buses. So I really think they should defund it. If it were operated like a commercial business, it would be successful. But they get the doggone. I think
you make a really good point, Ben. And yeah, it's not built efficiently. If it was built efficiently, they wouldn't continue to need more money to build it more efficiently. Scott in Canyon Country. Scott, hello.
Hey, Randy, how you doing? Love your show. Hey, I just got to say that if they're saying they need $20 billion, that means the project's going to cost $30, and in about 5 to 7 years, they're just going to rewrap it under different titles and do another bond and want more money at that point for the same project.
Oh, what's so great about this, they're not even saying specifically what they're going to build with it. It's just to keep these agencies running because they don't make any money.
So that's the problem. You're just throwing money down their drain for them, and they'll give other things to other projects to their buddies like they do over and over and over with no accountability.
It's more of the same. Thanks so much for the call, Scott. Appreciate it. And once again, I firmly believe that the whole idea of building a light rail will be antiquated and outdated and obsolete in 10 years. Maybe I'm wrong. Let's go to Richard in Palos Verdes. Richard, hello.
Hey, Randy, how you doing?
Doing great.
Yeah, actually, you're going to love this. I'm a lifelong liberal. Never would have dreamed of voting for Trump. Don't know if I ever, will ever vote Republican, but I'm done with this crazy spending in California. I'm tired of paying taxes. There is no way I'm supporting this bond measure. When you look at the waste that's going on in the state, when you look at how poorly the cities are run, how poorly the schools are run, I'm done. And so, I sit here, I'm listening to your show. It's opening my mind. I don't know. I may be red pilling. It's an interesting time for me. So thought I'd share that perspective.
It's an interesting time for all of us, my friend. Thanks so much for listening. I really appreciate it. Let's go to Bill in La Cañada. Bill, you got the last word.
Hey, Randy, the bullet train to nowhere is about to lose all federal funding. But a side-by-side comparison, it shows it's better than Metro. Look, the bullet train has no fare evaders, no overwhelming stench of urine or feces, not one homeless drug addict hanging around, no mumbling lunatics talking to imaginary people, no drivers or passengers ever get spit on or stabbed or shot. And the bullet train always arrives at its destination without incident.
That is very true, my friend. Thanks so much for the call. Well, we'll be keeping track of this one. Janice Hahn's idea for a $20 billion bond to keep Metro afloat. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC.